Yeah, everyone, this is Thermite, and I just finished watching Alita Battle Angel, and oh my gosh. Okay, so let's set some ground rules. First of all, this is meant for people who have already seen the movie, because I can't separate my thoughts from the movie from, just general other things. I can't do a non-spoiler review right now, so if you've seen the movie, please continue. If you haven't, please leave. Also, I have read the entire manga up to Last Order. So, I will be talking about the manga up to volume 5. I may have like tiny little hints at stuff beyond that, but I'll try not to. I really don't want to spoil anything there. And even then, I could just talk about volumes 1 to 3, but there are things from 4 and 5 that I kind of want to talk about, touch on. So we'll see, we'll see. Also, if you haven't seen the OVAs from the 90s, please do, because then I would honestly say that I think the OVAs are closer to the source material of this movie than the manga is. Like, I don't know at all how this happened, but I think that maybe like James Cameron might have seen the OVAs first and then read the manga, because the core skeleton of this movie is definitely the OVAs. Okay, so where do I begin? Like, it's a gorgeous movie, first and foremost. Absolutely beautiful. I love it. It is. I saw it in 3D, and oh, actually, I was gonna say, like, I usually don't see movies in 3D unless they're like, animated, especially Pixar movies. And I think Alita has something very similar to Pixar movies in a weird way. Like, in a Pixar movie, I think the 3D is important because there's more going on. It's not just, oh, there's another camera that happens to be there that is, filming everything at a slightly different angle so you can see more. Like, I feel like the 3D is important for selling the impact of various textures and various environmental things. It makes everything feel more real in a way that other series that do use CG just kind of, that use 3D don't really capitalize on. I think that Alita absolutely capitalizes on the use of 3D to make the world more immersive. Like, I don't think the movie is completely 100%, everything looks super realistic. But I think that actually plays to its benefits. Because everything looks slightly unreal, that means that regardless of whether they're using practical effects or CG, everything looks the same level of slightly unreal in the scrapyard. And I think that's incredibly cool. Like, Alita herself is, I was very worried going into the movie. I saw the first trailer and I saw stills and stuff here and there. I saw some props from the movie. I would not have, I was very worried about the way Alita looked. And I'm happy to say in the first few minutes of the movie, she does not look weird at all. Like, she looks slightly unreal, but she's meant to look slightly unreal. I think that's an incredibly interesting direction to take. And I'm happy that it paid off. Like, she really does feel like an anime character in real life. She feels like a cyborg in the sense that everything about her is slightly artificial, but she still feels real. She still feels like she is there. I think that's really the best way I can put it. Like, very early into the movie, there's that guy who is like playing the guitar, and he's using his cyborg hands to hit the strings. Like, the guitar itself is clearly made for someone who is a cyborg, and the way his fingers move, it's so perfect. Like, it feels like it could be like an actual physical effect that they were using, or it could have been CG. It probably was CG, but it was hard to tell. I think that's such a cool aesthetic to use for the movie because it sells everything equally. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of, the aspect ratio changes. I think that's just an IMAX thing though, where like there's just extra stuff. It's much wider than usual. Like, I've never been super into that, but like it doesn't detract from the movie at all. It's just more content that your eyes can absorb. And it like the entire movie looks so beautiful. Okay, talking not about the beautifulness of the movie, I do have some weird, like, how do I put this? I feel weird about the changes made in the movie. Not in the sense that they're good or that they're bad, but that there are changes that I don't fully understand. The movie's definitely getting sequels, and I'm sure that the changes will make sense in the context of those sequels. But in the context of just being a standalone movie slash, an adaptation of something, it feels really weird. Like, uh, just various different changes to the terminology, or the existence of the fall as the thing that caused the state of the world as we know it. The fact that there were other floating cities that are presumably destroyed. Like they mentioned that Zalem was the last one, and that might have just been like incorrect information, but we had a lot of stuff that just felt really weird. I think part of it's also that let's pretend I haven't read the manga. There's a lot of stuff like the flashbacks to Alita's Panzerkunst days, where they just don't really make sense in context as like a thing that is important for the movie. It feels like world building that doesn't really pay off, which feels very strange in the confines of a movie. I think that it's all fun. And I do appreciate a lot of the things that we saw. It's just that it makes the movie feel unfinished in a weird way, in the sense that I want to see more. I definitely want to see a sequel, but I didn't come out of the movie thinking like that was an incredible movie that I need to think about a lot in terms of the world that it created. It's more of like, oh well, I sure want to know how this pays off future, down the line in the future. Which is, I feel like that's a very double-edged sword. As opposed to what's a good example? I'd say like The Matrix, for instance. I think that when everyone walked out of The Matrix the very first time, there's a sense of like, oh wow, The Matrix is such an insanely cool idea. I want to think about it. Like, sure, I might be thinking about the sequel, what they could do after that, but the general focus is on like this world that was created. And I think that Alita has a weird problem with that. The world they created is incredible, and again, I love the way that it immerses the viewer in it. The world of they don't call it the scrapyard; they call it Iron City. Iron City is gorgeous. It's beautiful. I want to learn more about it, but I don't. I am tainted from the manga, so I don't know if I should be saying like, oh, I personally didn't think that like the problems I have might be problems that only occur to someone who has read the manga. That said, to go into other things that only affect people that have read the manga, I guess I should talk about the main characters. Alita herself is amazing. What was her name? I have the Wikipedia page open just for little facts and whatnots. Rosa Salazar. I haven't seen anything else that she was in, but my gosh, she plays the perfect Alita. I could not think of a better casting decision. And it's not just, visuals, because obviously she is re-rendered in CG. But in the way she acts, in the way she portrays, the emotions of this character, I really do appreciate, by the way, that for being fully CG, for being, mapped from from an actor, she does give off an incredible amount of emotion. It's so easy to empathize with Alita. It's so easy to feel what she's feeling in any given moment. And she does portray the Alita from the manga, from the early parts of the manga, incredibly well. Even the parts that, are exclusively from the movie all feel like a natural extension of this character, of this amnesiac who is learning more about the world and is, mad at times, is happy at times. It's so perfect. Dr. Ito also comes off incredibly well. I would dare say that Dr. Ito is better in the movie than he is in the manga. There's actually there are multiple scenes that I think really flesh him out, or not flesh him out, but that provide more pathos for him. There's one in particular I want to talk about a bit later, but okay. At the very early part of the movie, it feels weird to talk about this because I'm so used to dancing around spoilers, but I did say spoilers. The origin for Alita's name is no longer a cat, which personally, I was a bit worried about that at first. But I think the new origin is incredibly interesting. First of all, Chiren from the OVAs is a character in the movie. And at the very start, I kind of just assumed that she was fan service, in the sense that, she was a shout out to the OVAs, hey, this character, she's here. But she's definitely an integral part of the movie, incredibly integral. And I think that the change of Alita's origin from being named after a cat, but mostly just herself, to her appearance, her body, it all comes from Ito and Chiren's daughter. That is such an interesting decision to take that ties her so much more closely to both Chiren and Ito. It makes Chiren more of a powerful antagonist, more so than in the OVA. It also it recontextualizes everything about Ito. When he says that, oh, you're just supposed to look pretty, when he treats her like a porcelain doll, it has this entire extra layer on it. It's not just a man who is treating this random person like a surrogate plaything or something. It's a man who lost his daughter who now wants to, treat this person who looks basically like his daughter, who is, in the same body as his daughter. He just wants to treat her like his daughter, and how can you blame him for that? He is incredible in this movie. And there are like little tiny little details that I really liked. Like I was very worried at the start when he didn't have the mark of his dilemma on his forehead. But then they later on explain that by saying that yeah, he took it off himself. And that makes so much sense. Like in context and also just like as a human being, like as a character. I'm surprised that the Ito in the manga never, thought to do that. Like, oh wow. That said, while the protagonists are pretty good, the antagonists are pretty iffy. Like, first of all, Hugo is really not great. I guess he's not an antagonist, but I think of him as one. I don't really like his acting in the movie. It's a bit wooden. It's a bit iffy. Part of it might just be the fact that it is a teen romance, but like again, I had no problem with Alita. I had no problem with the emotions that Alita felt. They all felt very true and real, even when she was clearly making mistakes. So I feel like my problems with the romance really do come down to the person who was playing Hugo. Like in the manga, I didn't like him the most, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt for him to some extent. I didn't feel for him nearly as much in the movie. That might be a personal thing though. The other villains though, even less pathos. Like Grushka, for instance. Grushka is the version of Makaku that was in the OVAs. And I thought this version of him was pretty cool. I actually liked that he was more like Makaku in the sense that like he never does get to use the leech body to possess other people, but instead like he starts off with that big hulking body the same way that Grushka in the OVA does. But he does have a scene where I forget the name of the motorballer, but he has a motorballer's like arms taken off, and that's how he gains the whip-like appendages. I thought that was really interesting, and he has a line with Alita where he mentions that he was born in the sewers. But at the same time, while that is nice and fan servicey and made me happy, at the same time it feels kind of like it's tarnishing the being that is Makaku. Like when I first read about Makaku, like in the first volume, it completely changed the way I saw Alita. Like I went from, oh, this is, it's the first person that Alita fights. That's kind of cool, but whatever. To like, no, this is a very interesting, compelling character. I'm so surprised this is the kind of person that they would have Alita fight at the very start. Gruishka in the movie is the character that I thought Makaku was going to be in the manga. Like he's not that interesting. He's not that compelling. He's important in the sense that he is this monster that does a lot of bad things. He is the closest thing that the movie has to a main antagonist that is not Nova. But I didn't really care for him as an antagonist. Also on a very personal level, doesn't mean anything. I was happy that we got to see Jashigan, but I was sad that he wasn't Indian. Just because there's so very few like Indian characters in things that are manga adaptations, and it feels especially really strange because he's just an Australian guy now. That's really like, and that's just a very personal nitpick. In terms of actual like casting, he looks pretty cool, and I'm excited to see him in the sequel if we get a sequel because like I love that we did get to see Josh Gunn, that we did hype him up as being a motorballer, and that for a movie that is so motorball focused at times, we didn't actually adapt the motorball arc. I think that's really cool because it means that like all the assets poured into motorball will be used again if we get a sequel. Like then we can have the full Jashigan arc, and I think also like the full Zapan arc. Zapan actually, like surprisingly, I never really liked Zapan that much as a antagonist, but I think he might be my favorite antagonist in this. Like again, apart from Nova, but even then, like I think Nova's very cool for what we see of him. I think he has the same sinister feeling that he had early on in the manga, but like as an antagonist, he's just, like he's the bad guy. He's the big bad mysterious boy. I only really like him because of what I know about him in the manga. In terms of just like a character in the movie, he's like, he's just whatever. He's just, the big bad guy that has to be beaten eventually. Whereas Zapan is more of a, chauvinist pig who doesn't like Alita, who is constantly rubbing it in her face. I like that, with wounding him, like that clearly sets up the, the next arc with Zapan in it. I also surprisingly really like the fact that he is the person who used to have the Damascus steel blade, as opposed to it coming from I forgot his name, mask face guy. Like, I've always loved the visual of the Damascus steel blade and this idea that, it is like Alita. It's this ancient thing, this metal that came from ancient times that, no one really truly knows the origins of. Something that parallels her so well and something that was given to her by someone who, cared about her at the time. Someone who wanted her to succeed. It stayed as a constant part of who Alita is as a person. I actually really like that in this version it comes from Zapan, that it comes from someone who was in her way, that it stands like, it stands as this thing that came from her pushing back against the people trying to restrain her. That it is a symbol of, her strength that she had to pull away from other people. Especially if we do get the Zapan arc next movie. Because then that also ties him directly to her. It makes him more of a parallel to her. Like, that makes me incredibly excited. Oh man. Like, I don't have much else to say about Nova specifically because, he's just there. He's cool. Actually, I don't know who he was. I've got the wiki page open. He was Edward Norton? What? Okay, what? Wait a minute. Oh wow. Okay, so that's a big name to attach to a character who barely shows up in this movie. Like, that's definitely saying that, yeah, he's going to be important in the future. That also is saying that, yeah, we're going to have a future. That there is another movie planned, which is kind of just obvious at this point. Like, for sure. This movie... I feel like that might be my main problem with this movie, actually. Whoa, 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 whoa. I think we just stumbled upon it. I think my problem is that I keep on thinking of this movie in the sense of, like, I'm excited to see what happens next. I want to know what happens next. I have all these ideas for what could happen next. And again, this might be tainted by the fact that I'm a manga reader. That I'm coming into it from that perspective. But I do keep on thinking of it as less like as an example. Have you seen The Matrix? At the very end of The Matrix, I feel like most people walked out of it going like, "Oh wow, what a cool idea for a world. Like, what if we are also in The Matrix?" Like, I'm sure people did think about the sequels and what could happen next, but the main feeling at the end of The Matrix is, I want to think about The Matrix. I want to think about this world that was presented to us. And Alita does something similar in the sense that it presents Iron City to us. It presents this world. The main problem is that I, as a viewer, did not feel like I wanted to think much about that world, even though it is distinctly different from the world of the manga, and it is like beautifully fleshed out. There's so much to absorb and to visualize. Like, it's amazing, but I don't really care about it that much because the movie feels like it's just setting up things. Same with the Panzerkunster flashbacks. Like, there's a lot there that is interesting and intriguing, but it doesn't really play into the series itself. Like, it doesn't play into the movie apart from just saying, like, this is why Alita can fight people that are much bigger than she is. Which is important. Like, it's a big deal. But it doesn't really tie into the emotional climax. Like, one of the reasons why I'm so shocked by how much I like Ito is because, like, the big climax is something that affects Ito way more than it should affect Alita. Like, sure, it affects Alita in the sense that, it really severely affected Hugo. But the actual, like, the reveal of, hey, you can't go back to Zalem. This thing that Chiron was fighting for this whole time, yeah, it's not possible. Also, I chopped her up. She's going up to Zalem, but she's going up as disembodied parts. Like, that specifically shocked Ito so much. It shook me to the core because I cared about Ito. When, Ito killed Vector, which, I mean, first of all, he kills Vector. But, like, or, like, when that happens, like, it made me feel so deeply for him. That felt like the emotional climax of the movie, which was, then later followed up by the scene with Hugo and Alita. Like, it, it feels like one part in a much larger storyline, which is good in some senses, but I don't think that as a movie it's the best thing to do, because as a movie just by itself, it's it feels weird. It feels almost unfinished. Like, I really do love this movie. I love it so much. I think it's incredible. But I do have that one nitpick about it that continues to dig at me. Like, I am not the kind of person who went into it thinking like, oh, this has to be a one-to-one adaptation of the manga. My main problem is just that a lot of the changes and a lot of the things that are just the same don't really tie into the structure of the movie as a whole, like the strength of the movie as a whole. It ties into the movie in a way that like it makes the movie good, I think. It makes it a good adaptation. I do like it, but it feels disjointed in ways. I feel like if there is a second movie, or if we do get the full trilogy or even more, I think it's going to erase all my problems about it. It's going to feel like a 10 out of 10 movie. It's just as it is, as a standalone movie, it gives me those weird nagging urges. I feel strange about it. But I will say, the fact that they did diverge so much is really exciting as a manga reader, because like again, like Vector's dad, um, have like Zafan has a completely like not a completely different reason for hating Alita, but like it's different enough. It's like they set up so many weird little things that I'm really interested in. I'm I really want to see what happens next, and that's both a positive and a negative. It's a positive in the sense that, like, I am deeply hooked into the movie, I liked it, I want more, but it's a negative in the sense that I feel like the movie really does hinge on this idea of something will be next. Like, if the movie doesn't do well, and from what I saw, earlier as I was, like, driving home, a little worried about what might happen in the future, if we'll even get a sequel. And I guess that's also what's bugging me. The idea that we might not get a sequel scares me because this movie feels like it's begging for a sequel. But overall, like it is a fantastic movie. It's a good like manga adaptation. There are very few manga adaptations that I really like. Like, there's Edge of Tomorrow, there's the Ace Attorney movie, which isn't even a manga adaptation. That's an adaptation of a video game. Like, there's not a lot, and I would definitely put, Alita Battle Angel up there with, the best of the best manga adaptations. It's just it has problems that I am worried about, and I'm not totally sure right now how to reconcile those, or if they can be reconciled by just, a change in viewpoints. Overall, though, it is a great movie, and I don't want to downplay it. Like, if you're thinking about checking it out, first of all, I don't know why you watched this review. I said not to do it. I said that this would have spoilers. But if you're undecided, please check it out. It's such a good movie, and because I said you should have seen the movie before you watch this review. Like, you know how good it was, right? Wasn't it mind blowing? Please talk to me about it. It was I guess that's where I'm gonna have to cut it off because I'm just repeating myself at this point. Really liked it. It was a good movie, but it has its problems, and like I do think that the flash of it and the acting of a few specific characters more than makes up for the weak points. Overall, it is a mixed bag. I hope that it does really well, but I'm worried about it. I'm worried enough that I don't feel like, oh yeah, it'll 100% do incredibly well. I'm just a little worried. Overall, though, I'm happy that it exists. I'm thankful to James Cameron that this even happens. And I'll definitely watch it again. Like, just by talking about it, I've gone from maybe I'll watch it again to I'll definitely watch it again. I kind of want to see it in 2D just because, like, I love the 3D so much. I'm curious to see, like, how well all the things I like about it translate to 2D. Anyways, that's it. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Please tell me in the comments, like, anything you want. I want to talk about the movie. I will try to put up a spoiler-free version later on. I'll probably record it tomorrow. We'll see. In any case, thank you guys so very much for watching. Bye for now. Nya nya.